Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Carving Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. I'm Bryson Carver, as always. And folks, the NBA playoffs, or at least the top 6 seeds in both conferences, is set. So, again, the top 6 seeds are set, but we do have the play-in tournament. That I'm going to predict later in the show. Also, before that, I'm going to do a few... I'm at 3 segments at the end of each Carving It Up show this week. Obviously, Monday, Thursday, Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Right, we're watching Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter. Leading up, I'm going to do 3 sort of special NBA playoff segments leading into the playoffs, which start this coming weekend. This one today is going to be the top 5 players in the National Basketball Association in the playoffs that I think have the most pressure on their shoulders. I'm going to do that. Also, we're going to discuss the Ben Simmons situation, which Nets fans, just give it up. He not playing, and I'll discuss later in the show, as well as the Matisse Thybulle thing, which is really concerning for the Philadelphia 76ers. They are playing the Toronto Raptors, and one of their best players can't go because he's unvaccinated. I'll discuss that in just a second, and I'll discuss the Frank Vogel firing, of course, as well. Dang. However, got to start the show on a very somber note. We got some tragic news that came in on Saturday morning, and that was that Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback and former Ohio State superstar quarterback Dwayne Haskins, who was in Miami reportedly to work out with some of his receivers. I believe Mitch Trubisky, who's projected to be the Steelers' starting quarterback, he was there. Basically, Pittsburgh quarterbacks, receivers went down to Miami to train, work out, build some chemistry with the guys. And Saturday morning, Dwayne Haskins was struck, I believe, by a truck and was killed instantly. He was only 24 years old. And, you think about a guy in Dwayne Haskins who was, I think, one of the better quarterback prospects that I've seen coming out of Ohio State. Like, he really was. Like, you're talking about the big frame, the strong arm. The dude had all the capabilities. And I felt like now that he was in Pittsburgh, he wasn't going to be the starter. But I felt like, because I loved Dwayne Haskins coming out of college. I swear I had him over Daniel Jones. I even liked him just as much, if not more, than Kyler Murray, who went number 1 in the draft that year back in 2019. But, I'm thinking, okay, maybe in Pittsburgh, maybe they'll give Trubisky a shot. And then maybe at some points, he was a first-round pick for a reason. I figured, maybe he'll get a shot. And he's not, and even more tragic, a young man lost his life. 24 years old is just, he was just getting started. He had a wife, family, and so my heart absolutely breaks for the Haskins family, for friends, loved ones. I saw a video Chase Claypool, one of the Steelers receivers, put on social media, and it was just devastating. No other way to put it. It was heartbreaking. And so, again, my thoughts and prayers go out to Dwayne Haskins and his family. John, in the comments, rest in peace. Absolutely. And again, just a sad day. Forget just for the NFL, forget even for the Steelers, who, obviously loved him, and, former Washington teammates. And I saw Joe Burrow, who was teammates with Dwayne Haskins at Ohio State before obviously he transferred to LSU. He put a tweet out there of them back when Dwayne was in Washington. They were, I think, hugging after a game or before a game, something like that. And he said something like, trying to find the words right now. It's just devastating. So Dwayne Haskins, tragically gone at the age of 24, and may he rest in peace. Now, trying to talk about sports now after that heavy incident that occurred on Saturday morning. Let's now transition to the National Basketball Association. Basically, this entire show is going to be dedicated to the NBA. The playoffs start this upcoming weekend. We've got the playing games. Again, I'll predict those playing games at the end of the show. Hopefully, this is going to be the last time I talk about the Los Angeles Lakers for another month, maybe. It's kind of like the Cowboys. It's like with the Cowboys, you gotta don't rule out the fact that you may talk about it. I think I've gone like 2-3 weeks maybe without talking about the Dallas Cowboys. It's been really refreshing. Good for my good for my mental health, I guess, because it's been an absolute just. Oh, shut up, John. John John's in the comments says, "Let's go Yankees." Well, look, you took the opening series from us. We got that one last night. It was a good win for us, but yeah. Listen, man, it's a long season. It's the first 3 games. Got 159 games to go. I can always count on John, a big Yankees fan, of course, in the comments if I'm wearing my Red Sox hat, trying to troll me a little bit. But hey, you know what? Y'all took this series. But anyways, with the NBA, again, and the Yankees, the Yankees in baseball, you can't really go like 1-2 weeks without talking about the Yankees. Same thing with the Dallas Cowboys and the same thing with the Los Angeles Lakers, which we're going to talk about to lead the show today. I've been saying this for a good 2 months, for about a year, but especially the last 2 months as the Lakers season just went into a complete downward spiral. This is a poorly run franchise. It's a poorly run franchise. And yesterday was just yet another example of that. Frank Vogel, who was, we all projected probably, some went, you could say as far back as December, January, we're like, hey, you need to let Frank Vogel go. And it seemed all but inevitable that he was going to be fired by the Los Angeles Lakers. But you know how Frank Vogel found out about that? A reporter. The reporter, where'd he get that? Woj. Where did Woj get that? Probably from the Lakers. So in a sense, a man found out he lost his job via Twitter. The Lakers beat the Nuggets last night. It was a weird basketball game. I was watching my Warriors play the Pelicans, and I was watching Inside the NBA after. And Ernie, Shaq, and Chuck were watching the Lakers Nuggets game. It's just a weird game. Ended on a Mac McClung dunk. Kind of a weird way to end what was a weird season for the Lakers. But Frank Vogel, he knows he's probably done. And a reporter said, "Hey, the reports are saying that you've been fired." And Frank's like, I haven't heard bleep. I'm just going to celebrate this win with my team. But inside, I can tell you, that man was fuming. Not because he lost his job, because Frank Vogel knew at the end of the day, I'm probably going to get fired. They got to scapegoat somebody, I guess, right? Can't be the front office, can't be LeBron, can't be ownership. No, it's the coach. And look, I've always said about Frank Vogel, he's a good coach. He's not on the level of a Monty Williams, a Steve Kerr. Heck, I'd even go so far as to say Ime Udoka, who's my coach of the year for the Boston Celtics. After the job that he did, now he doesn't have the track record, obviously, of Frank Vogel, but he's a heck of a coach. I put him in that upper echelon. Right? Eric Spoelstra, great coach. And so, when I think about Frank Vogel, I don't think about in those terms, in terms of elite coaches. However, this is a guy who, 18 months ago, actually, matter of fact, 18 months ago today, a year and a half ago today, October 11th, 2020, Frank Vogel was the head coach of the NBA champion Los Angeles Lakers. Wasn't a problem back then. Last year, LeBron was out for about a month. AD was out for like 2 months. Frank Vogel led the Lakers to the best defense in basketball. The Lakers were number 1 in defensive efficiency and barely survived, kept their head above water in enough time for both LeBron and AD to come back, go on a 6-game winning streak, beat my Warriors in the play-in game, and get in the playoffs. Frank Vogel deserves credit for that. And then this year, a defensive coach, timeout, the Lakers are 21st in defensive efficiency. That's a massive fall from number 21. How does that happen? Because of what I said last July. Old. And the one guy who's not what we consider in basketball years old, Russell Westbrook, we've always known this. He's not a winning basketball player. Heck, he's not even a great player anymore. He's barely productive at this point. And so, and Vogel reportedly didn't want Westbrook, but he tried to make it work. Reportedly, Westbrook was, really difficult to work with Frank Vogel. Lakers got to cover their butts, right? They got to scapegoat somebody. They know they can't scapegoat LeBron or he's leaving. You can't possibly scapegoat Rob Pelinka now, right? I mean, he's Lakers royalty. No, he just happened to be Kobe's agent who you gave the job. You can't scapegoat the ownership. Jeannie Buss, the Rambuses. No, you can't do that. It's the coach. And reportedly, the reports come out today that they're going to go try and get Nick Nurse from the Raptors. Are you kidding me? You think Nick Nurse is going to leave Toronto for the Lakers? Really? Nick Nurse is in Toronto now. I get it's the high taxes and everything, but Nick Nurse is in Toronto, right? Masai Ujiri, who's one of the best executives in basketball, the president of basketball operations, he would go from him to Rob Pelinka. Okay? He would go from a great culture in Toronto, a culture that, 2.5 years ago won a championship with Kawhi Leonard. But even in that season, when Kawhi missed 20 games, Raptors went 16-4. So they were just fine without Kawhi. Not championship contender, but they were just fine. And then this year, the Raptors come out of nowhere, and they're the 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. And in my opinion, the East is better than the West this year. And the Raptors have a better record than the Bulls, the Nets, the Hawks. I mean, that's excellent. Nick Nurse is a heck of a coach. I've been saying this for years now. But he's going to go from, a very functional organization to maybe the most dysfunctional organization next to the Knicks. You're not getting Nick Nurse, Laker fans. I hate to tell you. Okay? And then secondly, they're doing exit interviews today. They do that usually the day or 2 days after a team's last game of the season, whether they don't make the playoffs or whether they lose in the first round of the NBA Finals. The team does what you call exit interviews. I don't know if the championship team does that because, they got a parade to prepare for, but all the other 29 teams got to do exit interviews. So the Lakers, of course, were no different today. And they were asking LeBron about what he thought the issue was for the Lakers this season, why it was such a disappointing season. And LeBron said, we didn't play enough together. He was talking about himself, AD, and Russ. We didn't play how many? And he asked the reporter, how many games did we play together? And a few of them said 21. He said, see, we didn't play together that much, no. Okay, first of all, the Lakers in the 21 games that those three played together were a game over 500. They were 11-10. Okay, so they were, barely floating above water. I've used that term twice, but that's what they were. Okay, then you add to the fact, I think about my Golden State Warriors. I know you guys get tired of me talking about my team, but I think they're a perfect example to use for today. The Lakers' best 3 players, LeBron, AD, I'm not sure Russell's one of their 3 best, but let's just call him their 3rd best player, right? Okay, so LeBron, and AD played 21 games together, right? And they couldn't even make the play-in tournament. My Golden State Warriors, the 3 best players are without a question, in order, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. It's their core 3. They've played 11 minutes. Not even games. Minutes. They haven't even played a full basketball quarter the entire season. I mean, I did the math of the possible minutes that they could have been on the floor together. In 82 games, 48-minute games, 48 minutes in a basketball game, those 3, Steph, Klay, Draymond, played 0.002% of the games. And the Warriors had the 3rd best record in basketball because they have a great culture. It isn't just about the fact that they have a great coach or they have a great general manager, great ownership, and a great roster. No, culture matters. The Lakers do not have a championship culture. Heck, these days, they don't even have a play-in tournament culture, apparently. Pelicans and the Spurs got to beat on that. Spurs haven't been relevant for 5 years. they got in the play-in over the Lakers. It is a culture problem, so I don't want to hear, and I heard AD say the same thing the other day. Well, we just didn't play enough together. Really? Chris Paul missed 2 months. The Suns had easily the best record in basketball. Ja Morant missed, 20 games? Like 21 games for the Grizzlies. They went 18-3 without Ja Morant? But no, us playing 21 games together, that was a nail in the coffin. What are you talking about? No, you were bad defensively. You were old. You couldn't shoot. Your point guard has a terrible basketball IQ, but it's the coach's fault. I mean, Frank Vogel, for the record, is the same guy in Indiana that had Paul George, which, Paul George won me over last postseason, so I love Paul George now. But George Hill and David West and Roy Hibbert, yeah, he got them to the conference finals twice. As a matter of fact, they took the Miami Heat, the Heatles, LeBron, D-Wade, Bosh, took them 7 games, almost eliminated them. LeBron in his prime with the Miami Heat, one of his MVP years, the Pacers almost eliminated them. But it's his fault. Miss me with that. And I hear Doc Rivers and Quinn Snyder's name being floated around. Stop. First of all, even if they come, I mean, Doc Rivers, love him as a man. Love Doc Rivers, and we all know he can coach. Only coach in NBA history to blow 3 series where he had a 3-1 lead. Only coach to ever do that. Did it in Orlando, did it twice with the Clippers. And last year got completely outcoached by Nate McMillan of Atlanta. But that's the guy who's going to take you over the top. And Quinn Snyder, he's going to take you over the top. A guy who couldn't get Donovan Mitchell to the Western Conference Finals in years where the West was shaky. He's also blown a 3-1 lead. Did it to Denver in the first round back in the bubble in 2020. But he's going to turn it around. I'm not out here saying Frank Vogel is Phil Jackson. Obviously, he's not. But this is becoming a culture thing for the Lakers. 6 coaches in 11 years. That sounds like the Cleveland Browns before they got Kevin Stefanski, right? You had, Mike Pettit and Hugh Jackson and Freddie Kitchens and, bunch of guys before that. The same case with the Lakers. I mean, we're Luke Waltons and your Mike D'Antonis and now obviously Frank Vogel just got fired. It is a culture issue for the LA Lakers. It is a poorly run franchise. The issue is Rob Pelinka was never qualified to be the GM. That we know. LeBron, love him. Terrible GM. And the front office, the upper management ownership group, Jeannie Buss, issue with her is she's giving too many people voices. At the end of the day, she is the owner. She has the final decision, not the Rambuses, not Kurt and Linda Rambus. So everybody deserves blame. And not Rob Pelinka. Frank Vogel shouldn't go without blame, obviously. But to scapegoat him as this, terrible coach, and we could have gotten here with any coach as long as it wasn't him. And both Charles Barkley and Shaq, they never agree on anything. I mean, we all watch Inside the NBA. Those two fight all the time. They were in full agreement last night. Ernie Johnson, talking about, Frank Vogel's probably going to get fired. And Charles said something along the lines of, yeah, they're screwing him over. And Shaq said, totally agree. It's 2 of the greatest players, 2 of the 50 greatest players of all time saying that. John says health was mostly to blame, then coaching. They definitely need a new GM too. The thing was, though, John, they weren't healthy last year. I mean, LeBron missed a lot of time. AD missed like 26 games or something. Might have missed more than that. Might have been like 36 games. I think it was like half and half. He played 36 and missed 36 because it was, the shortened 72-game season for COVID purposes. But, I mean, you're at, you had Dennis Schroeder, who Lakers fans hated, Kyle Kuzma, who Lakers fans hated, Montrezl Harrell, who, Lakers fans didn't like a whole lot, and old Mark Gasol. Who else on that? I love Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I have no clue why they got rid of him and Caruso. And they kept the Lakers afloat. Enough time for LeBron AD to get back, and they got in the play-in, and they got in the playoffs. Vogel never wanted Westbrook. Vogel never wanted Carmelo Anthony. He probably didn't want Dwight Howard either. Or DeAndre Jordan. Or Rondo. Well, he may have wanted Rondo. He liked Rondo. But he didn't want all these old heads coming in that's not going to play defense. Their legs are shot. So this was doomed for the beginning. And so, Nick Nurse is not coming to LA. He's not. And Doc Rivers or Quinn Snyder, neither of those guys are going to change life in LA. How you're going to trade Westbrook, I have no idea. Some bad organization or rebuilding organization is going to take him. I heard Charlotte might take him, which, Lord, I know Michael Jordan is, obviously Russell Westbrook is with Jordan Brand, but MJ, come on. You've already had a lot of bad moves in your career, owning the Hornets. You've built a solid team now. Don't screw it up with that guy, especially what you have to pay him. So, yeah, this was doomed from the beginning. Ownership's not. John says, hey, Melo played well. He did play well. He was good in his role. But I think the fact that, again, we are talking about a defensive coach. And Melo, even in his prime years, never played defense. Ever. And so that's really the NBA today, is 3-and-D players. Right? Can you knock down an open three-point shot? And can you play good defense on the other team's best guard or wing, depending on what position you play? So Melo played well, yes, but he wasn't a good fit for the Lakers. He's a decent fit for LeBron. Wasn't a great fit for the Lakers roster. But again, Anthony Davis is coming back next season, and he's going to be hurt again. LeBron's going to be in year 20. That's not exactly great for the body. And then what are you going to do with the rest of the roster? I think like 7 players are free agents or something crazy like that. Like, the only guys you know for sure you have to bring back LeBron, but he can't make GM moves. Bring back Malik Monk. That, honest to God, you can look at the tape. Malik Monk is the only move for the Lakers. I was like, okay, I like that move. Right? He's young, fresh legs, decent defensive player, and obviously we all know can knock down the threes. About a 40% three-point shooter. And you can bring back Austin Reeves. He's a good shooter. Everybody else is tradable. But this is not going to work in the long term. It's not. Again, it's a dysfunctional franchise. Not a good ownership group. Not a good general manager. LeBron deserves blame for bringing Westbrook into the mix. I mean, geez. And just look at the Clippers. It's ironic. It's the Lakers. Everybody's laughing at, and the Clippers were like, "Dang, that's a well-run franchise." Do you ever think we'd be saying that 15 years ago? Be laughing at the Lakers? Be saying, "Man, the Clippers. That's how you run an NBA franchise." I mean, really, it was after Donald Sterling showed his racist colors. They got rid of him. Steve Ballmer came in, and it's been a different organization. Steve Ballmer's a great owner. Ty Lue has done a phenomenal job in LA. By the way, Lakers could have had him too, but they didn't want him. I mean, that's someone else. Can we mention Ty Lue in the Coach of the Year discussion? How many games Paul George played this year? Like 30 something. So he missed over half the season. Kawhi hasn't played a dribble this season, and they're in the play-in tournament. Win one game against the Timberwolves, and they're in the playoffs. That's incredible. Lakers could add him. They didn't want him. They play great defense. It's a younger roster, but with veterans, you obviously, you got your 2 superstars in Kawhi and Paul George. The Clippers, let me tell you something. Next year, once Kawhi is back, you don't want to see the Clippers. That is going to be a scary, scary basketball team next season. This season, I think they will get in the playoffs. They will give somebody, whether it's Phoenix or whether it's Memphis, just push them. May go 6 or 7 games. But I think, of course, Memphis, that might be an interesting series. I'd probably still take the Grizzlies. Phoenix, I think, would be pushed 6, but I'd ultimately take Phoenix. They're the best team in basketball. But the Lakers couldn't even get in the play-in tournament in a weaker conference. Because I think the West is weaker than the East this year, just in my personal opinion. But once again, who'd have thought the Clippers? We saw them the Clippers. That's how you do business in the National Basketball Association. What? The Clippers, the team that didn't make a Western Conference Finals until last season, over the Lakers, who have 17 championships, tied with the Celtics for the most. It's crazy. It's nuts. But sometimes that's how it goes. Just because they're big brands don't mean they're well run. There's a big, big difference. Lakers are always going to sell tickets, but the late great Dr. Jerry Buss, Jerry West, they're about winning championships. Phil Jackson is about winning championships. I'm not sure where their focus is right now, to be completely honest with you. Okay, man. I really hope that's the last time I got to talk about that terrible organization for at least another month. Like, can we cross our fingers? You know what? Let's make a rule in the show. Not going to talk about the Lakers unless something genuinely major happens. Like AD's traded, Westbrook's traded. If they move off Carmelo Anthony or Dwight Howard, I'm not going to give it the time of day on this show. Like I'm tired of talking about that group. So let's move on to a playoff team, the Philadelphia 76ers. And listen, they are in some trouble. Big trouble. Because first of all, they're playing the Toronto Raptors, who forget the vaccine stuff, which I'll touch on just a second. Toronto's playing great basketball right now. You look at what they've done. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. They went from the play-in tournament to the 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. I believe didn't finish that far behind Philly, only 3 games. How many they win? 48 games this year. Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet was an all-star. Scotty Barnes might be the rookie of the year. I mean, this is a really good basketball team that Philadelphia is very unlucky to have to play in this first round. One of the reasons that this is the case is that Philadelphia's best perimeter defender, Matisse Thybulle, is not going to be able to play in Canada because of their vaccine requirements. As far as I know, I don't think, forget if you're an NBA player, I don't think you can enter the country of Canada if you're unvaccinated. So Matisse Thybulle is not. Like, this is the concern. Like, man, I hope the Brooklyn Nets don't draw Toronto like in the playing game or something, or Kyrie won't be able to play. Well, now it's the 76ers problem with Thybulle. So this could be an issue for the 76ers because, and again, I'll get to my top 5 players in the NBA with the most pressure going into the playoffs, but this is a cause for concern if you're the 76ers because Toronto's best 2 of their best 3 players likely are wing guys, Pascal Siakam and Scotty Barnes. And if you run pick and roll, you want to get a mismatch, Fred VanVleet, quick, shifty guard who can shoot. Actually, I think broke the record for most threes for the Raptors in a season. You want to get a big on him. That's going to be a problem when your best perimeter defender isn't there. Like Matisse Thybulle is long, agile, is a pretty good shot blocker. Like, I mean, I go back to a game. You could take this for what you will, but I go back to a game in December when Philly played my Warriors. And I remember that was when Steph was getting close to the 3-point record, and Thybulle guarded him throughout the game, and Steph couldn't get a shot off hardly. And this is a 2-time MVP, in my view, the second best player in the world we're talking about. Certainly a top 5 player. So this guy can lock dudes down. He gave Trae Young fits last year in the playoffs. The problem was Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid couldn't step up. But this is a bigger loss, I think, than people are giving it credit for. Because look, Philly isn't horribly deep after the Harden trade. Obviously, they gave up Andre Drummond and Seth Curry. Ben Simmons wasn't there, obviously, to begin with, so that that's not a huge adjustment. But this could be problems for the 76ers because now you're crossing your fingers James Harden actually shows up in the playoffs. You're crossing your fingers Embiid can stay healthy in the playoffs. He stayed healthy the regular season, but I mean, it seems like every year the Sixers are in the playoffs, he always gets hurt, coming in. So you have that, that aspect to it. Can Danny Green knock down shots? Can Tyrese Maxey step up? Tyrese Maxey's been really good in the regular season, but can he step up in the playoffs? He did last year, but can he this year? But this could be a drag out, maybe a 7-game series. Like today, and I'll make my playoff series predictions on Friday. Today, I favor Philadelphia because they have, in my opinion, second place for MVP in Joel Embiid. He very well might win the award. I'd have absolutely no issue with it. He's had a great year. He's actually the first center to lead the league in scoring since Shaq. I think Shaq did that back in 2001. Embiid's the first center to do it since, so congrats to him. But this could, and by the way, who do I trust more, Doc Rivers or Nick Nurse? I'm going to go with Nick Nurse. I have to. He's proven in the postseason. I mean, if we ever, now he's only been in the playoffs, I think twice. Yeah, twice as the Raptors coach. Have we ever been like, oh, Frank Vogel, I can't get the Lakers out of my head. Nick Nurse is the reason they lost that game in the playoffs. I can think of maybe one. Game 5 back in 2019 in the finals against my Warriors. Remember, Kawhi goes on that scoring tear. He scores like 12 straight points. There's like 3 minutes left. I almost called the Air Canada Center. It's called Scotiabank Arena now, I think. Scotiabank Arena is about to collapse. The fans are going so nuts. And when his best player's in a rhythm, Nick Nurse calls timeout, allows the Warriors to get a break, and then Steph and Clay, together score 9 straight points, and the Warriors end up surviving that game. Outside of that, I can't think of a game like, Nick Nurse lost that one. He got completely outcoached. Doc Rivers, we can say that a number of times. I just said earlier he was completely outcoached by Nate McMillan last year in the second round. Like, Philadelphia was the better team. Like, nobody disputes. Philadelphia should have absolutely won that series. I mean, there were some games, as great as Trae Young was, there were some games where Trae Young couldn't throw it in the ocean. Game 7 in Philadelphia, he couldn't do that. But one coach made the adjustments, one coach didn't. One coach instilled confidence in his guys. One seemingly couldn't. Even Embiid looked a little timid at times. Now, do we blame that Doc Rivers or Embiid? You could decide that among yourselves. But this is, I still trust Toronto in close games and big spots more than I do Philadelphia, because I think the Sixers are still in that mindset, like, who gets the last shot? Who do we go to in the last 2 minutes? Do we go to Harden, Embiid? Heck, do we go to Tyrese Maxey if he's feeling it? Whereas Toronto's like, execute whoever. It's very Phoenix Suns-ish. Whoever's open gets the shot. Simple as that. Who's the open man or who's got the hot hand, they're taking the shot. That's how Toronto's won a lot of basketball games this year. They're deep. They're great defensively. This could be a really, really tough series for the 76ers. Again, I'm leaning their direction, but I mean, we'll see. Would I be shocked if Toronto won the series? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Do they have the Vegas odds yet on game 1? They do. They're playing game 1 on Saturday evening at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific on ESPN. Sixers are 4.5-point favorites. So not overwhelming. Like, it doesn't surprise me Philadelphia is the favorite, given they're at home. And obviously Matisse Thybulle will be in Philadelphia, of course. And obviously them having home court with that whole situation is huge. But they're not overwhelming favorites. And you would think, if I told you a couple months ago when the Harden trade is made, and remember the Sixers got off to that great start once James, was inserted into the lineup. They beat Minnesota and they beat the Knicks back-to-back. And we're thinking, oh man, this looks good. I wasn't ready to, jump on board yet, if you guys remember. But if you had told me, hey, they're going to play Toronto in the first round, they're like, oh, they'll win in 5 games. I don't know. There's a lot of question marks with Philadelphia and the Raptors. Let's be honest, nobody is. Now, John thinks it's a 5-game series. He said 4-1 Sixers. I can't envision that. I really can't, because, and part of the thing too is, and this was I was going to mention, there's some pressure on Philadelphia. I mean, there's pressure on everybody because of the way last year went, because Embiid very well might be this year's MVP. Because of Harden, his history of coming up small in the playoffs, Doc Rivers, his history of coming up small in the playoffs, Raptors are playing with house money. Nobody's expecting them to go, forget win a championship, even get to the finals, get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, everybody's like, wow, Toronto kind of caught us all off guard a little bit. What pressure is there on them? I mean, don't forget, Scotiabank Arena actually hasn't hosted a playoff game since the NBA Finals back in 2019. That place gets rocking. And don't underrate the Drake component too. Drake's going to be right next to the Raptors bench. Yeah, talking to Harden, talking to Embiid, talking to all the Sixers guys. That's going to be a whole nother dynamic in and of itself. But one team's playing with house money and one is playing with pressure. And the main characters, the main figures for the 76ers, they haven't handled pressure very well. The guys in Toronto, a lot of those guys have won a championship. Van Vliet, Siakam, Anunoby. So they've got that Precious Achiuwa, I think, that came from the Miami Heat. He's been a great factor for him. I'm just saying that this really smells like a 6 or 7 game series. I favor Philly, but don't be shocked if it goes 7, or heck, even if Toronto wins the series. Who knows? This first round, though, is going to be great. I mean, look at the first round matchups. that are already set. You're going to have Milwaukee and Chicago. I'm sorry, John. I know you're watching the stream right now. I may see a sweep coming. I really may. Because first of all, I believe the Bucks swept the Bulls in the regular season, if I'm not mistaken. They just beat them recently, and the Bulls have been terrible post All-Star break. DeMar's been good, but obviously Lonzo being out just killed their chances of making any kind of run. I said before the season, the Bulls, I didn't think they were championship contenders, but given the offseason moves, I thought that if they get the right matchup, maybe they could be a surprise Eastern Conference Finals team. But that doesn't look so good now. They're having to play the defending champs. I definitely take Milwaukee to win that series. Obviously, I mentioned Philly and Toronto, talked about that. And then out west, you got my Warriors against the Nuggets. This is the matchup I wanted in the first round. I'd much rather play Nikola Jokic than Donovan Mitchell because one guy shows up in the playoffs, one guy does not. One guy's been swept, the other guy hasn't. Yeah, John's talking about his Bulls. He says, yeah, not looking good. Ball injury hurt us bad. It did. I mean, Lonzo, you look at, I've raved about Lonzo. I loved him out of UCLA. Loved him. I would have taken him, hindsight's 2020. Like I would have taken him number 1 overall over Markelle Fultz, which obviously if you do a redraft, he would have been taken over Fultz, but redraft Jason Tatum's probably the number 1 pick. John says leaning 4-1 Bucks. I'm not ruling out Chicago wins a game. What if DeMar DeRozan goes off in like a game 3 or something? Bring a little bit of interest to the series. That wouldn't surprise me at all, given how well he's played this season. The best season of his career. He was in the MVP discussion there for a while. But again, out west, you got my Warriors take on the Nuggets. Steph is a day-to-day, it seems like, according to Steve Kerr. If I had to make a prediction, if you had to make me predict when Steph's going to be back, I'm going to guess he misses game 1. I really hope I'm wrong on that, but I'm going to guess he misses game 1 and then plays game 2, I believe, which will be on Monday. But I'm smelling sweep. Denver's not deep. They're not great defensively. Jokic is going to get his, but who else is going to step up? This is feeling a lot like when Denver played the Phoenix Suns last year and got swept, right? Jokic got his, but they said, okay, you can get your shots, but we're not going to double you and let you set up open guys for open shots. I'm obviously taking my Warriors to win the series. I have them winning the whole darn thing still. And then Dallas and Utah. I was definitely going to pick Dallas to win the series up until the Luka injury happened last night. That could be devastating for the Mavericks. They're saying it's a strained left calf, which is, I read last night, Rudy Gobert of the Jazz had the exact same injury. And I think he missed like 3 weeks. Now, if it were the postseason, he would have played sooner than 3 weeks. But just, this could be really devastating for the Mavericks. This is a team that I said would win their first round series, play Phoenix in the second round. And I'm telling you, the way Luka's played this year, as great as their defense has been, would I be shocked if Phoenix lost? Yeah, but if Phoenix lost the second round, that's the team I could see them losing to, was Dallas. But if Luka's out, forget about it. That's probably a 5-gamer right there. I mean, maybe Rudy Gobert plays terrible in one of those games, and they sneak one. The Mavs sneak one, but Luka's got to be healthy in order for them to even have a shot. John says Denver wins game 1 if he doesn't play. Talking about Steph. I don't know, because here's the thing. My Warriors, after Steph went down, they played terrible. I was there in Atlanta when they played the Hawks. It was not a pretty sight, especially in the defensive end. But Jordan Poole, give that man most improved player. I don't know who else it would be. Give it to Jordan Poole. Klay Thompson has been on fire. Brian Windhorst said back in December, the Warriors expect Klay will look like Klay come playoff time, and by golly, does he ever. It was the first time in his career. Ernie Johnson said it last night, and it shocked me. It's the first time in Klay Thompson's career that he has had 3 straight 30-point games. And he scored 41 last night. He looked amazing. So, no, I would absolutely take my Warriors even to win that game 1. They're at home, rested. Even without Steph, I think that they can get a game off of Denver. Grady says the Bulls were one of those teams coming into this year that needed everything to be right to be real contenders. They've really come back down to earth lately. They're a good team, but honestly a second-round treadmill team. And again, considering that they're playing Milwaukee, I don't think they're smelling the second round. But a lot of optimism going into next year for these Chicago Bulls, and for good reason. I've always loved Billy Donovan as a head coach. Obviously got DeMar's a great year. I mean, really, once Lonzo got down, that was it. Or went down, that was it. Alex Caruso missed a lot of time, got hurt on that dirty play by Grayson Allen. Who else am I missing? Vucevic hasn't been all that great this year. Zach LaVine, he's been up and down, unlike last year. So I don't know. Zach LaVine was amazing in the first half of the season. I don't know what happened. But yeah, like you said, Grady, Chicago's just kind of came back down to earth. But moving on now to the Brooklyn Nets. This is also a team that, I mean, at least with Brooklyn, at least they made the play-in tournament. Unlike a team out west that I'm getting sick and tired of talking about. But Ben Simmons got an update on his health yesterday that Steve Nash provided. And he said, quote, this is after the Nets beat the Pacers yesterday. Nets won the game. They're now the 7th seed. So basically, scenario is pretty simple for Brooklyn. Win a game at home over a beat-up Cavs team, you're in the playoffs. That simple. Which, again, I'll predict the playing games in just a second. But Steve Nash said there is no timetable for Ben Simmons' return and that he still has yet to even run. So Ben Simmons hasn't even started running yet. He's not going to play in the playoffs. I mean, the only shot I think that he has is if Brooklyn gets to the Eastern Conference Finals, which, look, given their talent, who's to say they can't? Because they would avoid – no, actually, they wouldn't avoid Milwaukee. If they win, they'll actually play Milwaukee in the second round if Brooklyn can get past Boston. And even that, I think, is a question. I mean, Boston is phenomenal on defense. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Celtics finished first overall in the NBA in defense. Now, that's not going to stop Kevin Durant. That's not going to stop Kyrie Irving. But what about the other guys? I mean, that's what you need to try and make a run. Back to Lonzo real quick. Grady says, look at the amount of games Lonzo played his first 5 years in the league. He's a starting NBA point guard, but barely plays more than half the games. Guy is injury prone. He is 100%. And, that was part of it was his ankle issues. Part of it was wearing those big baller brand shoes, which if you've ever seen those shoes, they are terrible material. Like it's no wonder Lonzo had so many ankle issues. They have like the worst ankle support I've ever seen in a basketball shoe. I mean, you could buy like basketball shoes at the, your local, like, I don't know, Goodwill or something that gives you better support than those $500 big baller brand shoes. And I haven't heard much about, the brand specifically, obviously the balls, but not the brand in a while. And that's, again, those shoes were terrible. It's no wonder Lonzo got hurt so much in those. But yeah, he has struggled to stay healthy. Now, not so much now as in the last few years or his first few years of his career, because to Lonzo's credit, he has put on some muscle as he's kind of grown into his man body. So I don't think this will be a continued pattern for him. It's just, I think this year was just bad luck. But again, back to the Nets. I know a lot of people are talking about, okay, because we all assume, okay, Nets are going to win their playing game over Cleveland and they'll play Boston in the first round. You say, okay, KD's going to get his. Kyrie's going to get his. Probably not as much as KD because Kyrie's up and down in the playoffs. KD's phenomenal. They'll do what they got to do, right? It's a great duo. But what you going to do to stop Jason Tatum? I remind y'all, Brooklyn was in the bottom, I think 10 to 12 defensively. So they were below average defensively. The only team, I think, in NBA history that has been below average defensively was like the 2002 Lakers. I think it was the 2002 Lakers, but they had Shaq and Kobe. KD and Kyrie is a great duo. They ain't that. That's the most dominant duo in NBA history, was Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. And so that's not going to translate. You got to be able to lock down on the defensive end of the floor. And what are you going to do to stop Jason Tatum? What are you going to do to stop Marcus Smart from getting open shots? And my man Grant Williams open shots, right? Jaylen Brown. Did the Celtics miss Jaylen Brown in the playoffs last year or what? He's back. Now, Robert Williams is out, so that's a killer injury for the Celtics, not having that big man presence. But Daniel Tice has done a fairly solid job filling in for Robert Williams. In all likelihood, he probably won't be able to play unless the Celtics get to like the conference finals, maybe even the NBA finals. So that's obviously a tough injury for him. But if Ben Simmons is in the lineup, I would probably take the Nets. I don't like Ben Simmons. I've always been critical of him because I don't think he cares about the game the way that most players of his caliber do. But one thing I've never criticized Ben Simmons for, Duke can lock you down defensively. Long, agile. He was up for Defensive Player of the Year last year for a reason. Like he could guard Jason Tatum, but he hasn't even started running yet. That's what Steve Nash said. Don't ask me, ask the coach of the Nets. Steve Nash said that. So I don't see him coming back. I can't. If a guy leading into the playoffs isn't even running, are they just going to throw him out there and risk further injury? And maybe he comes into next season injured. The Nets aren't going to risk that because Ben Simmons is going to be there for, I think, another like 3 years or so, 2-3 years. So there's no point in risking it now this year, or at least risking his injury this year in the name of going and winning a championship if he's not ready to go. There's no point in that whatsoever. But I just think it's look, Brooklyn, I think in the Simmons deal got hosed because the deal went down and we all assume, okay, Ben's going to suit up. He's going to play now. And then this mysterious back injury comes out of nowhere. And I've given you my theory for why I think the back is injured, because he, didn't stay in good basketball shape. And then once he got to Nets practice and was trying to, play full speed, he pulled something. He didn't have himself ready. He wasn't ready. And I think that's yet another indictment of Ben Simmons and how much he cares about the game. So that's going to be a killer for the Nets on the defensive end of the floor. Because even if you survive Boston, the heck are you going to do to stop Giannis? Or you can't stop Giannis. What are you going to do to limit Giannis? You could really use Ben Simmons. I think Ben and Giannis are basically the same height. You could sure use Ben Simmons for that, but you're probably not going to have him if you get to the second round. So this is why I'm not overly high on Brooklyn. Can they beat Boston? Yes. Yes, they can. Would I be mad if Vegas comes out and say they're favoring the Nets? No, I get it. I get it. Right? Because Tatum's phenomenal, but who do we really trust in the postseason? We're going to find out. Grady says Cleveland. Oh, wow. Grady is going out on a limb. He says Cleveland will beat Brooklyn in this play-in scenario. Brooklyn been looking past everyone all year. They have. I would still take Brooklyn. Again, I hate to sort of give a spoiler. I'll make my predictions later. I think that game is tomorrow. Yeah, it's tomorrow at 7 on TNT. The Nets are pretty big favorites, 8.5-point favorites in that game. But again, I'll predict the 4 playing games, or at least the first 4 playing games, to end today's show. But first, let's talk about, listen, the old saying goes, pressure breaks pipes. We know this. Some dudes are cut for the postseason, some are not. There's like 3 levels of what stars do in the postseason, not just the NBA, but any sport, okay? Either they stay consistent and they are exactly what they are in the regular season. They elevate their game and they're even better in the postseason than they are in the regular season. Or the moment's too big for them and they decline. Their production declines. And so here, I've got a list of 5 players, in my opinion, that have the most pressure on them going into the playoffs. So since this is a segment about pressure, let's get the pressure music, some intense music going on right now. Let's start with number 5 on my list of the top 5 players in basketball coming into the playoffs that have the most pressure on them. Starting with number 5, the reigning finals MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Yes, you heard me right. Now, he's got less pressure this year than last year, obviously, because he got the monkey off his back last year, winning a championship, playing phenomenal in the NBA Finals, averaging, I think, 35, 12, and, I think 2 blocks or something crazy, and he was obviously closed it out with the 50-point masterpiece. Here's the thing, though. My theory on if you're the best player in the world, and I think Giannis is the best player in the world, you're always going to be expected to not just, get better in the postseason, but do it what you did last year. And the Bucks are a team that I said before the season I think can get to the NBA Finals, and I think will get to the NBA Finals. But I think at the end of the day for Giannis is, for years we put pressure on LeBron. We expected LeBron every year to win a championship when he was the best player. Well, now I think we need to put that same pressure on Giannis. And so that is why he's number 5 on my list. Reigning Finals MVP, very well might do it again this year, and he's at my number 5. Number 4, the guy who, in my opinion, should finish second to Giannis in this year's MVP voting, Joel Embiid. Now, Joel Embiid has always been very, very interesting in the postseason, because most of the time his issues haven't been just simply, he didn't raise his level of play in the playoffs. A lot of times with Embiid, it's been health. I mean, remember a few years ago, it wasn't like a knee or an ankle or something. No, he was sick. He reportedly had like upper respiratory or something. And it limited him in the remainder of that series where they lost to the Raptors, where obviously Kawhi hit that shot heard around the world that bounced 4 times before going in. But Joel Embiid has had opportunities, has been in Game 7s, has had an opportunity to produce. And that Game 7 against the Raptors wasn't all that great. That Game 7 against the Hawks last year came up small. And also something else about Embiid. He seems to kind of wear down in these series, especially once you get to the second round, and I think Philadelphia will probably get to the second round. But is he in enough shape to get to the finish line, to take the 76ers where they think they can go, certainly after they made that Harden trade, and that's to go win an NBA championship? There's a big question around that, and that's why Joel Embiid is number 4 on my list. Going to number 3 now, a guy who I thought probably a year ago was the best player on the planet, my man Kevin Durant. The thing about Kevin Durant is this, and going to Brooklyn. He came to Brooklyn with Kyrie Irving. A year later, James Harden came along, and KD has never won a championship. She's been to 1 finals without the Golden State Warriors. And so our expectation is, coming off the Achilles, okay, he's proven that he's still Kevin Durant, even, after that terrible Achilles injury. He's still that dude. He's still the most gifted scorer that I've ever seen. But last year, Nets kind of fell apart, but KD shows up in that Game 7. I think he scores like 49, plays unbelievable, but he goes 0 for 7 in the overtime period and airballed the game-tying shot. So this go-around, with the expectations where they were at with the Nets going into this season, I mean, can you imagine what it would do for KD's legacy if he wins a championship without the Warriors? Could we argue it elevates him into a top 10 player ever? You'd be talking about 3 championships, likely 3 finals MVPs, a regular season MVP, 4 scoring titles. That's one heck of a resume. Again, for that reason, for legacy purposes, I think there's a lot on KD's shoulder. And who knows? Maybe he could take the title from Giannis as the best player on the planet. Giannis took it from him last year. Maybe KD can return the favor in 2022. At number 2, one of my favorite players in the league, the point guard, Chris Paul. You know I love Chris Paul. If my Warriors weren't in contention, I would root hard for the Phoenix Suns to go win it all. And again, they very well might win it. Chris Paul in the games he played this year was excellent. He led the NBA in assists this season at about 10, I think it was 10.8, 11 assists per game. He's been excellent. The Suns have been by far the best team in the league, clinched the best record of basketball weeks ago. So they've been great. They won 64 games. That's a franchise record. We thought last year was Chris Paul's best chance to win a championship. Didn't play so well. After the first 2 games in the finals, got outplayed by Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday. Okay, so this go around, Chris Paul's 36, 37 years old. Time's winding down in his career. He's one of the greatest point guards ever do it. I've said in the show, a championship puts him in the top 5 all time at his position, in my view. But he's got to play for the Suns to try and go make a run at a championship, which obviously they have a great chance to do. Chris Paul's got to play big. And so that's why he's number 2 on my list. And number 1, folks, he's got to show up at some point. James Harden. James Harden, I hate to have to do this again because I don't like piling on. I think social media does that enough. James Harden, 2015 with the Houston Rockets, he finishes second to Steph Curry for the most valuable player. He faces Steph Curry and the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. Not only do his Rockets get bounced in 5 games, but in that decisive win-or-go-home Game 5, he sets the NBA record for the most turnovers in a game in playoff history. I think it was 14. He was terrible. 2 years later, James Harden once again finishes second for MVP, this time behind Russell Westbrook. That year, I thought James should have won the award. Nevertheless, down 3-2 against the San Antonio Spurs. You've got a home game. You got a game in your home building. The Spurs don't have Kawhi Leonard or Tony Parker. And you lose by 39. And James Harden was miserable in that game. He was terrible. And so that component onto it, you come to a year later, you have Chris Paul as your teammate now. You win the MVP this season. You're the most valuable player according to the NBA writers. Chris Paul goes down in Game 5, but in the Western Conference Finals against the Warriors, but you have a 3-2 lead. Got a game at Golden State. If you lose that, no harm, no foul. You can go win back at home in Game 7. The Rockets had a 17-point lead in Game 6. They lost by nearly 30. They had a 15-point lead in Game 7. And the Rockets, led by James Harden, proceeded to go 0 for 27 from three-point range and lose the game by 9. A year later, karma comes back and bites the Warriors. This time, it's the Rockets who are healthy and the Warriors who have Kevin Durant go down in Game 5. Rockets are down 3-2, but best player in the series is gone for the remainder of the series. You've got a Game 6 at home, and Steph Curry goes 0 for. Did not score a point in the first half. Goes on for 33 in the second half. James Harden could not make a big shot down the stretch, and the Rockets lose. And then last year, Kyrie Irving's out. You've got a Game 7 on your home floor against the Milwaukee Bucks. KD plays out of his mind, scores nearly 50, and James Harden couldn't throw it in the ocean. Yes, he was injured with a hamstring. I understand that. But how many times have we seen dudes that are hurt or sick go out there and dominate? So James Harden's had every opportunity to go out there and show up in the playoffs, and he hasn't. So this year, when it looks like we're starting to see signs of age from James, he's got a shot. He's got maybe the MVP on his roster. What you going to do? So James Harden's number 1 on my list on the top 5 players going into the playoffs with the most pressure on them. Again, we'll look at the list once again. Giannis is 5, Embiid's 4, KD's 3, CP3's 2, and James Harden, the beard, is number 1. Top 5 players in the playoffs with the most pressure. Grady in the comments says, a little off topic, but does Kawhi Leonard have one more championship if he stayed a Raptor? This Raptor team is still pretty good. It is absolutely, it's a very good basketball team. They were obviously, again, the 5 seed, won 48 games. I'll tell you this. I'd have loved to see Kawhi in Toronto in the 2020 season because, let's be real. If Kawhi is in Toronto in 2020, they get back to the finals and they play the Lakers. So, think about this. Jimmy Butler, who's not on the level of Kawhi Leonard. Love Jimmy, not on Kawhi's level. Jimmy Butler carried the Heat without Goran Dragic and Bam Adebayo, carried them to Game 6 against the Lakers before he just ran out of gas and the Lakers cruised in Game 6 and won the championship. Can you imagine them playing Toronto? That'd have been an interesting series. I may very well have taken the Raptors to win that, and if they would have won that, man, that'd have been something. I would have liked to have seen Kawhi stay in Toronto for another year, especially coming off a championship, but he does have a good culture around him in Los Angeles now with the Clippers, with obviously Ty Lue at head coach, Steve Ballmer as the owner. I think Jerry West is in their front office, and Jerry West, as great as he was as a player, he's an even better executive. I think he's the greatest executive in NBA history. You look at the trades he's pulled off, the teams he's impacted. Helped put the Showtime Lakers together, traded for Kobe Bryant to pair and got Shaquille O'Neal in the same offseason. Suggested the Warriors in 2011 draft Klay Thompson. Suggested in 2012 they draft Draymond Green in the second round. Jerry West is as good as they come. So Kawhi's got a great support system around him, and I don't think the Clippers will win a championship this year even in the event that maybe Kawhi comes back next year, that's going to be interesting because you'd have Phoenix, Golden State, and the Clippers. Like those, to me, that would be the top three. And obviously Memphis would be better coming into next year. And we'll see, what teams like Dallas and Utah do. Utah may blow this thing up. The reports I'm hearing don't sound promising out of Salt Lake City. But let's move on now to the play-in tournament. Last topic of the day, the NBA play-in tournament, which, by the way, I don't agree with most things, especially regarding COVID, that comes out of Kyrie Irving's mouth. I will agree with Kyrie Irving wholeheartedly on one thing. The play-in tournament is great for the NBA. Like Kyrie said something last night, the play-in tournament has been great because last year you get LeBron versus Steph, get two of the best players of all time, the two best players of their era, playing each other. It's a great basketball game. LeBron hits the game-winning three. And then this go-around, you have KD and Kyrie, and possibly, who knows, maybe they face Trae Young. If they lose to Cleveland, you get a Nets-Hawks game, sign me up. Part of me kind of hopes Cleveland wins tomorrow just so we get the drama of a Nets-Hawks, win or go home game to get in the playoffs. That would be fascinating. But the first two games are tomorrow. You got an Eastern Conference playing game, a Western Conference playing game. The first one, Cleveland Cavaliers, Brooklyn Nets, both finished 44-38. The game will tip off after 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific time on TNT, and the Nets are 8.5-point favorites. So Vegas obviously loves Brooklyn to win this game, and I can't say I disagree because, first of all, you're at home. You have the aspect of, you got Kevin Durant and Kyrie, so you have no question the best two players in that game. And Cleveland, like Chicago, really faded in the second half of the season, after the All-Star break. Darius Garland is an excellent basketball player. Evan Mobley, he might be Rookie of the Year over Scotty Barnes, who knows? But the Jarrett Allen injury really hurt them bad. Jarrett Allen might be the best shot blocker in basketball, and he's out. So, when Kyrie goes into the paint with those ridiculous layups, and he's just the best non-dunking finisher I've ever seen. When Kevin Durant wants to go inside, Jarrett Allen's not going to be, in the post. He's not going to be down there, trying to block some of those shots. So that's going to hurt, Cleveland a lot. And so I try to, usually with two good basketball teams, and Cleveland's absolutely a good team. They've shocked everybody this year. Nobody thought Cleveland would even be in this position, but they are. However, I think looking at this, I think Brooklyn Club covers the 8.5-point spread. It's a lot, but I think they'll cover. I've got them winning. I'm going to go, let's say Brooklyn wins this game. I think it's a blowout, and I think they score a lot of points. I'm going to go 120-104. Brooklyn wins this game tomorrow night and gets in the playoffs. And then Cleveland would have to play the winner of Atlanta and Charlotte, which I'll predict in just a second. The second playing game, I'm more interested. This, to me, is the most fascinating of the 4 playing games, to me, because you've got a Clippers team that has no Kawhi all year. Paul George misses most of the season. He's back now and has been playing pretty well. And somehow, some way, they end up in the play-in tournament where it's win a game and you're in the postseason. That's why I said Ty Lue should be in the consideration for Coach of the Year. Playing a Minnesota team that nobody saw, getting to this position, maybe sneaking in the play-in tournament. I know my guy John, when we did our prediction show for the NBA back in October before opening night, he said, watch for Minnesota to maybe sneak in that play-in tournament. But I don't think either of us thought that they'd be in a position where they basically, the scenario is win a home game and you're in. But Chris Finch, who, by the way, congrats to Coach Chris Finch, who just got an extension today, well-deserved. And he's done a great job coaching this bunch. Karl Anthony Towns has had a phenomenal year. Anthony Edwards, we know what he brings to the table. He can go for 40 on any given night. You got guys like D'Angelo Russell who control the pace fairly well. This is a Timberwolves team that can give somebody problems in the first round, maybe steal a game off of a Phoenix or a Memphis, depending on who they end up playing. But in this game, Minnesota is 3-point favorites. So Vegas is saying pick them. Home team gets 3 points. That's all they're giving to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think that this is a down-to-the-wire, close game. I'm going to take the Los Angeles Clippers. I think the Clippers win this game. I think it's a defensive battle. I think the back and forth between the big man, Karl Anthony Towns, what can Zubas do against him? That's, to me, that could decide the basketball game. And Paul George, take notes, Russell Westbrook. You can get rid of bad reputations very quickly in the NBA. Paul George went from pandemic P, us making fun of him and internet's making memes, to no, I'm that dude. I can take a team to the Western Conference Finals. That is exactly what he did. He is officially, like I said last year on this show, he's playoff P now. He's that dude. And I think he will be the best player on the floor tomorrow night. And I will take the Clippers to win this game. I'll go 107 to 104. I think it's a 3-point game. I think it's a tight, down to the wire, great basketball game. Might be the best game we get in this play-in tournament. I'm going to take the Clippers to win this game. And then moving on to Wednesday's games, you've got back in the Eastern Conference, you've got the Hornets and the Hawks, which tips off at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific time on ESPN. The Hawks at home are 4-point favorites. If I were a bet man, y'all know that the segment I do on the show.
You're a betting man.
If I were a bet man, I'm jumping all over the spread. Give me Atlanta to cover easily, because here's the thing. Both Atlanta and Charlotte are great offensive teams. Charlotte plays no defense. Atlanta's not great in the defensive end. Charlotte's awful defensively. They're probably worse than Brooklyn. As much as I love LaMelo Ball, and he was an all-star this year, rightly deserved, that he's terrible defensively. Miles Bridges, not good defensively. Their bigs, terrible defensively. Terry Rozier, I love Terry, scary Terry, but he's not guarding anybody. So what the heck are they going to do to stop Trae Young? That guy, kind of like Paul George last playoff showed us, he's not scared of the big moment. He's one of those guys I mentioned of the 3 categories of what star players do. He elevates his game. He's better in the playoffs than he is in the regular season. And so I think Trae Young shows up. Home game for Atlanta. Again, been to State Farm Arena. It's a great environment, great fan base, and I think the Hawks will win this game fairly comfortably. Because Charlotte's so bad defensively, I'm going to go 115 to 99. 115-99. Atlanta wins this one easily. Charlotte's season ends once again in the play-in tournament, and Atlanta moves on to take on the Cleveland Cavaliers. And then you got the San Antonio Spurs and the New Orleans Pelicans in the last of the, I guess you could call it the first round, so to speak, of the play-in games. Spurs-Pelicans. Pelicans are 5-point home favorites. The game tips off at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific on ESPN. This is an interesting one because the Spurs have kind of been up and down the stretch, but because the Lakers were so bad, winning only 4 games after the All-Star break, it just cleared the way for San Antonio to get in. They went from like 3.5 games back of the Lakers to, let me look at the standings right now. How much further ahead of the Lakers did they finish? Only a game ahead of the Lakers. Because the Spurs finished on a 3-game losing streak, the Lakers won 2 straight. But at the end of the day, it did not matter for the Lakers because they were terrible down the stretch. But San Antonio isn't playing great basketball right now. I love DeJounte Murray, another guy who's an all-star this year and absolutely deserved it. The big man play is not great, and that's going to be a problem against the likes of Jonas Valanciunas. Obviously, we know what Brandon Ingram gives you, what C.J. McCollum, who's been great in New Orleans since that trade went down. Given that they're at home, given how much better they're playing on both ends of the floor than San Antonio, I'm going to take the New Orleans Pelicans to win this game by a final score of, let's see. Yeah, I'll go Pelicans in a fairly close one, 107 to 100. 107-100 Pelicans win this game, this playing game over the Spurs, and they take on the Minnesota Timberwolves, which will be a very fascinating matchup for the 8 seed. Got quite a few comments here. Let's see. Okay. First one, Grady says, if Donovan Mitchell is available, that's a star the Knicks definitely throw all the chips to the center for. I wouldn't do it for Dame or AD. If I were New York, that team should be the favorite to get him. If I'm New York, I'd go after Dame. Like, I would still go after, Dame. I would not go after Anthony Davis. The guy is phenomenal, cannot stay healthy to save his life. Dame, this is like his first year of his career where he's had a major injury that's kept him out, the rest of the season. And Portland just mailed it in. They tanked, the rest of this year. But yeah, Donovan Mitchell, that'd be a fascinating one. Young, I think he's a superstar player. I love Donovan Mitchell. The Jazz gave him a lot of money. He's worth every penny. That's a great player that the Knicks could possibly go after. I think he would love the Madison Square Garden spotlight. And like Grady said, I would go after him because he's legit just entering his prime. John's talking about the vets versus the young guns in this play-in tournament. Grady says, credit Karl-Anthony Towns for finally becoming a real star in this league. I was starting to think he was the equivalent to Kirk Cousins in the NBA. Proved me wrong. It's funny, same city, Kirk and Cat. And again, Karl-Anthony Towns, to be fair, unlike Kirk Cousins, Kirk's won one playoff game. Cat has yet to he's only made the playoffs one time. They lost to Houston back in 2018. But like I said, he's been big time this year. He actually won the 3-point contest. A 7-foot center won the 3-point contest, and that's what Cat did, and he was great. John says, I'm starting this now. Beal to Charlotte. They need a star. I'm trying to think who they would give up for him. I obviously have some draft picks. They may have to give up Bridges to get a guy like Bradley Beal. And the only reason I wouldn't be like crazy high on that trade, Charlotte's already great offensively. Of course, Beal would make them better, but Bradley Beal's a terrible defensive player. Like, I think he needs to go to a team where they're sound on the defensive end. They need him to do what he does, get buckets, and play good team defense. Like, that's what I've always said that James Harden has been misused for. James is a terrible defensive player, but get him to buy into a team defense, a help defense type of concept. Charlotte, I don't think, is going to do that. So, of course, it would make them better, but I don't think it would be just this big, like, they're a guaranteed playoff team if that goes down. I don't know if that'd be the greatest fit in the world on the defensive end of the floor. Grady says, don't undersell this Hawks team led by my man Trae Young. He might be causing some upsets in the play-in this season if they play anyone but the Bucks. Trae Young won me over last year in that play-in tournament. He was phenomenal. But when you think about the impact that he's had on this Hawks team since they drafted him, you think about a guy who, again, someone else who isn't great at the defensive end of the floor, but Nate McMillan's got him to buy into that, that end, which, of course, he was key for them last year. That's the thing I respect about Trae Young. When he wasn't making shots, he's getting dudes involved. If I'm not mistaken, I saw a stat on Trae Young. Let me see if I can find it. There was a stat on Trae Young that was fascinating in terms of him, being able to. It was something. It was like he did something that hadn't been done since like the 70s. If I can yes, okay, here it is. Trae Young in total points and total assists led the NBA. That has never been done before. Like, that's crazy. I figure like maybe Magic Johnson would be in that group. Even a guy like LeBron would be in that group. Trae Young's the first guy in NBA history to lead the league in total points and total assists. That's outstanding. So credit to him. And I would not want to play Trae Young in the first round. Grady says, John, doing the same thing for the Kings. Get Westbrook to Sacramento. Dude needs to be playing for that team. They deserve each other. They're the equivalent of the Burger King of the NBA. The Burger. Actually, you know what? I'm not even going to give them Burger King. Burger King's to me. I'm always going to take Burger King any day of the week over McDonald's. Let's call. See, I don't want to blast brands like this. I don't want to like just take shots. Sacramento is like the Crystal. If we're talking about fast foods, Sacramento Kings are like the Crystal. Like, I know my man Barry Grant Jr., shout out to him. He says they're NBA Siberia. The Kings are the Crystal Burger of the NBA. Garbage. Longest playoff drought in the NBA belongs to the Sacramento Kings. Not all that surprising. But yeah, that's my play. And I'll predict that whoever wins or loses the playing games will have. I don't think there's any games on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check. I think they're going to have them both on Friday, because last year in the play-in tournament they had 2 games on Tuesday, 2 games on Wednesday. One game, sort of the winner go home for the 8 seed on Thursday, and then the winner go home for the 8 seed in the opposite conference on Friday. But I think they're just going to have a day in between. Yes, then there'll be 2 games on Friday. All right, and then the playoffs will start on Saturday. Let's go. Cannot wait. My war's about to make a run right here. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Thursday, as always, at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. Be sure to catch Carving Up on the Carving Up podcast as well, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. By the way, on the podcast, be sure to catch episode 1 of the Carving It Up U.S. President's Edition. Episode 1 is out there. Episode 2, of course, will be on Saturday, but go check that out. My man Isaac Loss and I talk about all the presidents in order. We started with the Founding Fathers, so be sure to go check that out. And be sure to follow Carving It Up on social media, at Carving It Up Podcast on Instagram, on Twitter, at Carving It Up Pod, and on Facebook, search Bryson Carver, and the Carving Up logo should come up right there. So that's it. That's all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by again. Have a great week, everybody. Stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. Let's go Dubs. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.